Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
I've been going out with a girl, her name is Julie, but last night she said to me when we were watching telly.
Let's go to Portsmouth and Harry. Hello, Harry.
Oh yeah, sorry, I wasn't expecting to go on so soon.
Oh, I'm sorry. Do you want a little sort of build up? Okay.
I've just run to sit down because I want to get my breath back.
Okay. Do you want to get your breath back? Because we can come to you after the news. I've got things I can read out.
I'm all set to fire off.
Okay, fire off.
Right, Prologin, she's doing it. She's self-serving. She's done this before. She's got the model. She's using the same lawyers.
Yes.
So she's just been sitting waiting. I like to think that, say in the 80s, we'd all voted to do what the Greenham Common women did and go bring in a nuclear ban, and we had a referendum on it. Mm-hmm. I wonder what would have happened then. It seems that Gina Miller is only for using the lawyers when the vote doesn't go her way. Any vote that goes her way, you'll never catch her using the lawyers.
But then she's only using the law, as you say, and if the law is in her favour, then why shouldn't she?
Well, yeah, fair enough, but it's just the final thing. Actually stopping an action that's not been necessarily enacted yet. Mm-hmm. Jumping ahead. Now, in the past, I understand that when the Cash for Questions came up, John Major closed Parliament down early because he didn't want the embarrassment of the report coming out. You know how they get embarrassed about reports. That's what I've heard. Okay, well, I don't know about that. I'd need a little bit of research time for that one, Harry. Forgive me. I know that you wanted to shout off, but we've got the gist of what you were saying. I've got to get to the news. That's all. Let's have a listen to what Helen thinks. Helen is in Watford. Helen, why are you anti-Miller?
She needs deporting. She wasn't even born in this country.
Whoa. Come on. Be nice. Don't say things like that.
Well,
what about her argument? Don't be personal.
Why are the media giving her such a huge platform when they won't give Robin Tilbrook a platform to This is Robin Tilbrook, who's also got a court case underway about Brexit, saying that Exactly. And the government are trying to shut him down because they're a Remainer government and they don't want people to know that that Robin Tilbrook says we legally left the EU already. Okay, just to put you right, by the way, she was born in British Guyana, which is British. Okay, so there's this old thing about. So just carry on, Helen. Yeah. Now, why are the media not giving Robin Tilbrook such a huge platform, and yet they're giving Gina Miller? Every time she pops her head above the parapet, they're giving her a huge platform. Mm-hmm. The government are just trying to shut down. We've lost our freedom of speech. All right. Well, listen. If you feel that we, the media, have not given fair lip service to the other side of the coin, go on. Tell us. Have you ever talked about the Robin Tilbrook case? No. I've mentioned it quite a few times, yeah, but we haven't done an hour on it, no. No, exactly, but why? You haven't put it out there so the whole country knows that it's going on. And the government have just tried to throw it out and say it's not relevant. All right, well, you tell us what's going on there, as long as you're not breaking any sort of libel laws. Well, I wouldn't know. All right, never mind. Fine, let's just leave it. You tell me about Gina Miller, because that's what we're talking about. You haven't given me an argument as to why you think she shouldn't be allowed to do what she's doing. I would like to see Boris, because we hope he'll get in, basically put himself on the line, prorogue Parliament, and even if that means he'll lose his job and get taken to court, he should do it, because we need to leave. We voted to leave. We need to leave. We've got a Remainer government, the big globalists who are trying to stop it from happening. Okay. And that in itself should show you that it's the right thing to do. Okay, fair enough. Samantha has a view on this. What do you think of Gina Miller and what she's doing, Samantha? I think it's disgraceful. There's so many people in positions of authority, although I don't know where her authority comes from, are trying to renege on what the people wanted. The people want out, and we need to get Boris Johnson in there and get us out. And all this business about the last 3 years of listening to different people in the different parties in government trying to stop every single move that's made to get us out. Why are they doing that? That is not democratic. That is not what happened in the election. People want out. Right?
She says it's a
Some people
separate.
want to stay, and they're holding the country to ransom.
She says it's a separate thing. She's not a fan of Brexit, but she's not doing this to stop Brexit. She's doing this because she wants to retain the sovereignty of Parliament.
But she's not democratic about it. Why can't I go? Why can't I go to the powers that be and say, I'm not happy about the way this is being held. I want to stop it. Can I do that? No, I can't. And neither can the so many millions of people who want to get out do anything about it. And the lady that's just been on about the other report, where somebody's taking, I don't know what they're doing, I've never heard about it.
Yeah.
And to shut down all debate about leaving the EU.
Right, well, I don't think that's fair.
How does this Gina Miller, for example, know that things are going to be bad? We don't know.
No, I don't
How
think
does
she's.
she
But
know?
she's not arguing about whether or not Brexit is a good thing or a bad thing. She's saying that our sovereignty, our constitution, our democracy, our way of life is being threatened by a government that wants to tread roughshod over the House of Commons and Parliament. Parliament
No,
must
it
have the
isn't
final.
that.
What?
The government are there. Those people in government should be doing what the people asked.
Right.
They all have.
But in order for the government to get anything through, it has to get voted through by Parliament. And the theory being that if you're the government, you've got more on your side than you have on their side.
Yeah, but they're all Remainers.
What?
They're all Remainers. They're not standing for what the country wanted. They are being selfish and they are thinking about themselves. They should be saying the country voted to leave.
Samantha,
and
did
leave
the country want a no deal Brexit? They wanted Brexit, but did they know or even understand about no deal? Is that what we voted for?
I don't understand what will happen if we remain.
You do understand what will happen if you remain, because nothing will happen. It'll be exactly the same as it was last Tuesday.
You tell me what will happen to our economy if we stay. Greece are not having a good time. Neither
What will
is
happen to our
France,
economy if we
neither
stay?
are
What
Italy.
in the short term? I'm sure things will level out. The FTSE will probably.
You're not sure.
So you think if we decide to call the whole thing off, the pound will plummet?
How do you know?
I think it's pretty obvious that things will stabilise.
Obvious is
In the short-
a non-entity.
In the short term,
No,
Samantha.
it is not. Our economy, we are doing better here than any of the other European nations. Tell me that's not correct.
All right.
Tell me all our people are out of work. Tell me our dustbin men don't deliver. Don't
All our
empty the
What was the
dustbins.
bit about out of work?
Pardon?
What did you say about everyone's out of work?
I'm just saying.
We've got
Are we
the
having a
highest level of
problem with
employment we've had for 20 years.
We're not having an issue with money. Most people are okay. Most people are okay.
So let's not do it then.
Oh yeah, let's do it.
Okay, fine. Sorry, Samantha. Quite.
And this second time, he's probably going to win more blacks than before. Now, Trump, the thing about the left is this. They fail to constantly see what the people want. What Trump tweeted out is not what basically everybody's saying it. Even me, as a black person from Africa, how is it possible that a congresswoman coming to a country, America giving you this opportunity, for you to be able to bring this racist behavior?
Joe,
everybody's racist.
Three of the four of them were born in the United States. They are citizens born. And actually, let me finish. Even if they weren't, just as I would never say to you, get back to Africa, the whole point of America, it seems to me, is that people have the freedom to argue politically the case that they wish to argue, but hopefully in a manner that doesn't involve racism.
But why do you see racism in everything?
I don't see racism in everything.
If Ilhan Omar doesn't think America is great, just today, I think, she made a comment. She said, when you go outside America, everybody thinks America is great. But when you come here, we don't actually feel the greatness. Well, says who? Says who? This is America. Nobody owns slaves.
Yes, but
Nobody owns slaves.
But Joe, you can You can argue with her, and Donald Trump can argue with her. Anyone can argue with her and say, America is great. Let me tell you why. And she can come back and say, here are ways in which it isn't great. Let me educate you. And you can come back and say, that's fine. I still disagree with you. That's called political argument. But saying to a black woman or a Latina who happens to be, both of whom happen to have been born in the United States, saying go home is because of the colour of their skin. It's saying go home black lady, go home Latina. It's saying go home. It's racist.
No, it's not. And we're tired.
Home is the Bronx. Home is the Bronx for AOC.
No,
you know that.
We're tired of white leftist people trying to tell Africans or black folks how we should feel.
I'm not.
Racist.
I hope you don't think I'm telling you that. I'm not telling you.
We are happy in America with Trump.
Yeah, good.
We have jobs.
I'm pleased.
We're able to move forward. We do everything. And we don't want Ilhan Omar and these liberal democratic leftists to continue to sow division amongst us.
But Joe...
The white people were the ones who led after slavery. The whites. It's not the blacks, it's the whites. The white people were the ones who fought anti-slavery. So today, to demonize white people, it's just ridiculous. And this shows a lot of division. And this is so... I mean...
Joe, Joe, please stop talking for a second so I can come back and we can have a conversation.
Okay, go on.
It was always going to be the white people against slavery who fought to end slavery because the slaves didn't have the freedom to do so at the time, if you think about it. And I promise you that I'm not trying to tell you how you should feel. If you think Donald Trump is great, good. If you think America is great for you and life is better for you there, brilliant. I'm happy for you. I'm happy for your family. Long may you thrive. The politics of these 4 congresswomen is their politics, and they have every right to practice it, and they have every right to represent people, black, white, whatever, whose experience of America at the moment is not as good as yours. That's their job. And to shout at them, go home, when they do that is because of the colour of their skin, and it's racist.
Yes, but Ilhan Omar calls everybody else racist.
I'm not her. I'm not Ilhan Omar. I'm talking to you, Joe. Joe, I'm talking to you, not her. I'm not speaking for her. I'm telling you, when I hear those words, when I see those words, if I ever said those words, it's racism.
Okay, and I'm telling you, as a black person and a person who lives amongst African Americans who also, a lot of them support Trump, they feel the same way because they're tired of immigrants. When we come here, it's an opportunity because we couldn't have the same opportunities in our country. That's why we come here. So when somebody gives you access to their home, you come in there and treat them with a bit of respect. But I don't even care about.
If Trump, you don't mind me saying, Joe,
Trump.
Shall I tell you what I think? With all due respect, I think you are suffering from a little bit of meekness.
That's what the left always say. Constantly they want to degrade people, and but you can fight for ourselves.
No, you can be as
fight for ourselves.
You can be as
the white left.
You can. I'm not fighting. I'm not the white left. Just so you know.
We can fight for ourselves.
But
we can fight for ourselves.
You can enjoy America, and you can be pleased that you're there. You can be grateful that you're there. Doesn't mean your critical faculties end. And if you disagree with, and you don't disagree. You don't disagree with him. That's fine. But if somebody else does,
the president. Show him a bit of respect. That's all. Show him respect.
Oh, see what I mean about meek? 346. Thank you, Joe.
I don't think it's racist what he said to the 4 ladies in Congress there, in any way, shape or form. They're all Americans, and he's just pointing out that their disruptive activities, they're hardline socialists, mate. They're left-wing extremists, and they're trying to change American politics from within. And he's just pointing that out.
And what's he trying to do? When he took over from Barack Obama, was he trying to carry on doing politics exactly the same as Obama did, or was he trying to change it from within?
Well, Obama didn't successfully change it from within, so it's
not a trick question. Did Donald Trump seek to carry on conducting politics in America in a fashion identical to his predecessor, or did he seek to change it from within by becoming president?
I know it's not a trick question, and I'll say exactly what I just said again. Obama didn't change American society like he wanted to, so Donald Trump is re-establishing American capitalism.
Pardon?
You heard.
Donald Trump is re-establishing American capitalism. 51 months of consecutive growth, all of which began with Obama.
No, Obama's taking credit for growth. That's absolute hogwash, and you know it.
Stuart, can you count?
Mate, you are in sympathy with these ladies in Congress who are trying to transform the country into
You're on the radio.
Don't interrupt me, mate. Don't interrupt me. You are on the side of these women because you would favour socialist society, a left-wing society as well.
Go on, mate. I'm not interrupting you. I'm waiting for you to say something sensible.
No, you just can't come back with anything. Mate, you're in sympathy with these women, and
Name them. Name them.
Media.
Name them.
Well, AOC, for a start.
What does that stand for?
Alexandria Occasional Cortex.
No. So you know all about their politics, you don't even know their names, and you're on national radio having your pants pulled down.
Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Omar, Presley.
Mate, you've got your phone out. You've got your phone out now.
Yes,
you come on national radio, claiming that you know everything about their policy. So, which policy do you think most demonstrates their socialist tendencies, Stuart?
High taxes beyond all belief, and ploughing that money into public services.
Mate, you can't have high taxes under socialism because everybody earns the same. So let's try again. Which policy do you think best espouses their socialist tendencies?
No, everyone earns the same after the socialist template's successful, which means destroying the middle class.
So they don't want socialism, then they want high taxes for high earners.
Are you telling me those women don't want socialism in America?
Stuart, I'm telling you, you don't even know their names. Stuart, you don't even know their names. Did you just say? Did you just say fifth column?
I knew you'd ask me.
Yes, but you looked it up on your phone. Stop interrupting. Sorry, Stuart. Carry on.
Right, I knew you'd ask me their names because you couldn't come back with anything, so I looked on the screen on my phone, yes.
Why didn't you know their names before you rang in?
Because I just looked them up and researched them, mate, and I know exactly what...
Why didn't you know their names before you rang in, if you know everything about their politics? Why do you think... Theoretically, why do you think you might not know their names, but you know what they stand for politically?
Mate, I got their names up on the webpage.
But that's not what I asked. That's not what I
knew you were going to ask me their names because you couldn't come back with a valid argument.
I already have. I've asked you to name one socialist policy that they support.
High tax.
That's not socialism.
It is socialism.
Okay, Stuart. What do you think socialism means?
Socialism is an ideology. You subscribe to it.
What does it mean?
It's never been proved to work.
What does it mean, Stuart? For the record, I'm not a socialist, but tell me...
Look, mate, I'm in support of Donald Trump.
Yeah, I know you are.
Comments on...
And you like the racism, but what do you think socialism means?
Look, you're not going to Wikipedia me out of this argument, mate.
I don't need to. I know what it means. Tell me what you think it means. I didn't say the word, you did. What does it mean?
It means collapse. And you know it. And you subscribe to it.
Go on.
And it will never work.
Socialism means collapse. You know it. Socialism means collapse. Yes. Do you want to say something? Do you want to expand on that, Stuart, at all?
Well, the socialist policies, mate, have never been proved to work.
So name a socialist policy, Stuart. We're back round the other side of the circle now. You can't define what it means, and you can't name a single socialist policy. What are you so angry about?
Well, I'm trying to actually speak, mate. You just constantly interrupting me and getting me to name things, right?
Yes, like a socialist policy or the meaning of socialism.
So this is what happens, you see.
I know.
A left-wing media commentator will not let someone speak when their opinion is against theirs.
What does socialism mean? You can't have an opinion about socialism if you don't know what it means. So what does it mean?
To me, personally?
No, you silly sausage. To everybody, not to you personally.
Right, socialism is an ideology. It's a political system, and it does not work.
What does it mean?
What does it mean? Look, James, I phoned in support of Donald Trump.
I know.
His comments aren't racist. Those women are...
What does socialism mean?
America.
Stuart, what does socialism mean?
So this is what happens, you see. You get someone into a dead end. Socialism, I don't know the Wikipedia... You know, you're trying to get me Wikipedia me to death here.
No, just any meaning at all, Stuart. I didn't mention the word. It's 12 o'clock. I've been doing this topic for an hour. No one said socialism except you. What does it mean?
No, everyone that's phoned in has more or less been in support of the fifth columners there in America.
What does socialism mean, Stuart?
Right, to all your listeners, okay, as they are listening and nodding their head, the ones that are supporting what I'm saying is, socialism is a template that the four ladies in Congress are trying to bring into America. It doesn't work.
Stuart doesn't know what it means. Stuart hasn't got a clue what it is. Stuart's on national radio condemning socialism and revealing he doesn't know what it means.
Okay, it's high taxes, it's healthcare for all that doesn't work or bankrupt the country. It is attacking big business. It's an incestuous relationship between big business and government.
Sweetheart. Listen, next time...
Patronising, you see.
Of course I'm patronising you. You're a clown. You're on national radio condemning socialism and you've been asked...
You're a clown.
No, you're a clown. No, you're a clown.
And you're just as bad as those women in Congress.
And you're just as bad. And my dad's bigger than your dad. But go home.
House building and office refurbishment, and have been for over 20 years now. And I remember when I used to work alongside a lot of Polish, Russian, Lithuanian, and they was on similar wages to what I was on at the time. And they used to earn their money. They used to live in like a house with maybe 10 of them in there, send all their money back home and build a house at home.
Yes.
And the problem is now is like I'm still on the same wage I've been on for the last 10, 15 years, and I'm self-employed.
Yes.
I have no regulations. You know, I have I have no pension. I have no savings, nothing at all. And everyone keeps saying about, well, we're blaming immigration all the time, but the fact of the matter is that they can bring in three foreigners, paying £40, £50 a day to do the same work that I could do.
Well, that's illegal.
Well, it's illegal, but it happens all the time. It's a common practice with the big
But it's illegal.
Big
so the problem is the law being broken, not the people being exploited by the lawbreakers. But anyway, let's park that for a moment, because it's a well-known red herring. I'm not blaming you for swallowing it.
It's not a red herring.
Well, it is a red herring. The people who are being paid less than the national legal minimum wage it doesn't matter where they're from. They're victims of crime. They're victims of exploitation.
James,
so when they're not here, no one's sweeping under the carpet. We're just calling it what it is, a crime. It's got nothing to do with the European Union membership. They're breaking the laws. They're breaking the rules.
The thing with it, though,
just wait a minute. Just wait a minute. Let's stop them all coming now, right? Free movement is...
I'm not even saying...
No, I know you're not. That's why I'm saying theoretically. Let's stop all these... Well, Russia's not in the European Union, but the Lithuanians and the Romanians and the Poles. What do you think will happen to your wages if that supply of legal labour... I can't... There's no point talking about illegal labour, but I understand why you went there. What do you think? What do you think is going to improve for you?
Well, I don't know at the moment, because the fact of the matter is...
Well, you did ring me to answer that question.
Yeah, no, but what I'm saying is, Jay, is I am absolutely lost, because...
Yes. Why do you think leaving the European Union is going to find you or help you find yourself?
Well, because the last 10 years, nothing's changed. If nothing's changed for the last 10 years, I'm
looking forward. Well, it could be worse than the status quo, John. You could have voted to make things worse.
Yeah, but James, me and a lot of my colleagues who do the same work I'm doing, we are willing to take the chance to sacrifice our own jobs, to take a chance to see what happens.
You're willing to sacrifice your own job to see what happens?
Yeah, honestly, because I'm at the point now where I rent. But James, this is the thing. I rent. I have no savings. I have no pension.
No, I've got nothing but sympathy for your situation. I'm just fascinated by how you think losing your job. How is losing your job going to make anything better?
Because
John?
James, my job at the moment and my wages I earn at the moment are not improving my life. My life is still getting worse and worse.
But why do you think things are going to get better if you haven't even got that job?
But what else can I do? If my wage is what I'm earning now, my job I'm earning now,
well, the answer to
not improving my life.
No, I know, but we're dancing around it. I mean, first of all, if I was right-wing and lazy, I'd say, well, there's nothing to stop you changing and getting a better job. But I'm not right-wing or lazy, so I'm not going to patronise you by saying that.
You're on about upskilling and stuff all the time.
I'm not. I'm telling you what the findings are among people who are in similar situations to yours.
I'm highly skilled as well in my job.
Well, what really?
Yeah, honestly, I'm highly skilled.
But your minimum wage?
No, I'm not minimum wage. I can earn £150 a day.
Well, hang on. I thought you were getting replaced by unskilled labour on £50 a day a minute ago.
Yes, because what they do is they can bring in 3 people the same wage as me.
But then you're not doing skilled work then. I don't want to dig into your CV, mate. You're not making a great deal of sense.
Right,
all I want to know, all I want to know from you, John, is how do you think things are going to improve for you?
Right, well, just give us 30 seconds, I'll explain.
Good.
So what I'm saying is, what happens now on the jobs is they bring 3 people in for the same wage as me, and then I have to go back and redo their work for them on the same wage, you know, and I'm getting...
when they're not here, you won't even have that work.
Well, but it's like I said, I'm willing to take the sacrifice and maybe have to change my job or go on benefits.
Why can't you do that now?
The status quo, I don't want to do that. I want to try and fight to try and earn more money, but in 15 years, it's not changed. Nothing has changed.
But John, you're not. Either you're not hearing me, or I'm not being clear enough.
I'm hearing you, James. I don't think you're hearing me a great deal.
Well, no. In 15 years, nothing has changed. There are some illegal, unskilled workers that do your work, even though you're a legal, skilled worker.
Yeah, and like you said, we'll just sweep under the carpet. It's still going on.
No one's sweeping anything under the carpet. I've completely acknowledged.
Everyone is.
Well, how can you? You're on national radio, saying it out loud, John.
But James, all we get is Remainers listening to the programme all the time. They don't want to listen to me because I'll be called a Nazi or far right or that's what happens all the time.
Well,
whenever you say anything,
forgive me, John.
You're just getting labelled.
What have you said that you think might see you labelled a Nazi?
Because I said that that's what happens all the time. So I've said about we should have less immigration.
Yes.
So straight away people just
and that is what I'm asking you. How is that going to improve your life? Do you think?
I don't know.
Right, well, we got there in the end. There's no shame in ignorance. It's just a really silly thing to do. If you're terrified or really unhappy about how things are now, you voted to make it worse.
What do I do about it? Do I just carry on the way it is?
Well, I've told you what you do about it. The politicians that you voted for think that you should get a different job or get some new skills or move. Do like Norman Tebbit said, get on your bike. But you voted for those politicians, John.
I did, but no one else...
Jesus, man. You voted for the ones that have told you that if you're not happy with what you've got, you get on your bike and you move somewhere else. You haven't voted for politicians that would have got you trade union protection. You haven't voted for politicians that would have clamped down on the exploitation of illegal under minimum wage labour. You haven't voted for the politicians that think there should be protections and regulations in the construction industry greater than what we currently have. You have voted for the people that want to take away what little you already have, man.
No one listens to us.
Oh, heavens above, John. I've just been listening to you for 10 minutes. All you've done is whine.
Keith in Stoke Newington, hello.
Hi, Shirley, yes. Listen, the greatest respect, your last 2 guests and a lot of other people are completely wrong. They just don't understand the legal issues here at all. And to explain this, I've got to give you a very brief bit of history here, and it goes back to Oliver Cromwell, who got rid of Charles I for dictatorship. He handed power to Parliament. The MPs became very corrupt, self-serving. He arrested them, put them in the Tower. He then acted as Lord Protector until he died 5 years later. Then Parliament realised they needed a power above Parliament to check possible corruption in Parliament. So they reinstated Charles II, the monarchy through Charles II, but he had to, as this Queen had to, sign a coronation oath to protect the people from corruption. Now, the Supreme Court has said that Parliament is sovereign. In a referendum, what Parliament did, it handed over its sovereign power to the people to make the decision. And they knew leave means leave. All this rubbish about saying they didn't know what it meant is rubbish. Now, 75% of the...
Can I press pause on you for a second and ask you... they knew leave means leave. I agree with you. People who voted to leave knew they were that's what they wanted to do, to leave, or that's what they wanted to vote for. Do you accept that the variations on leave are quite important and quite distinct?
No, not at all.
No, you don't.
Leave means leave, and that's it. But anyway, to get back to my point...
Well, hang on. No, I will. I promise I will let you get back to your point. But just on that, because you're making a lot of points at once, so I want to pick a few open. Leave means leave, but you know, don't you? You accept, don't you, that there are different ways of leaving the European Union? Otherwise, what's the last 2.5 years been about?
No, the only way... what's happening here is that the EU don't want us to leave, so they are putting up these bogus questions to try and stop us.
No, they're not bogus. They're, Keith, with again, to use your term, with all due respect, they're not bogus questions. Leaving a 40-year-old legal and trade and social deal clearly has implications if you sever ties immediately or if you do it rather differently with a transition period and, elements of agreement over time and a backstop. I just want you to tell me, given the campaign that was run and the likes of Nigel Farage talking about a Norway-style Brexit, given what's been going on in the last couple of years and the types of Brexit, the variations on the theme of leaving that we've seen, can you still say leave means leave?
Yes, well, let me make this point too. In answer to that particular question is, when we first joined the EU in 1975, the agreement never required us to be subject to the Court of Human Rights, to Strasbourg controlling us. And it was a pure trade deal. There was no legal regulations for us to abide by European law. And then Blair and Brown, Bill and Ben, the Valpot men, signed this Lisbon Treaty, which handed over all our power, and we became under the European Court.
But isn't this
we're in breach of the original contract at any rate?
All right, but isn't this keep a bit like what they used to call common law marriages, I suppose they're still doing law, that you might not have signed on the dotted line, although in Lisbon we did, but the relationships develop over time and roots grow together over time, and then the reality is that unless you separate carefully, the children are going to die. Do you know what I mean?
Well, yes, but
you can both punch each other in the face and walk out the door, but the kids aren't going to thrive if you do that. So let's do it like adults.
Let me answer that point. What you're talking about is people are raising the issue of risk. It's going to be tremendous risk if we leave the European Union because England will suffer. That's their case, which is totally bogus for this reason. If you go back to 1600, when the East India Company started trading internationally, the risk of those ships going out and trying to find where they were, most of them got lost. The risk was incredible. But as a result of that, they created the City of London as the financial centre of the world because we took on the risk, we challenged it, and we took it. The same applies here. If we leave the European Union and start trading internationally, we're going to beat all the other European nations because we've done it before, and they're terrified of us. They're terrified of our power, of our economy. So there is no risk. We have to face the risk and go forward. But the point, let me get back to
So for you, it was always no deal?
Yeah, I mean, let me get back to this no-point deal, which is what I'm trying to make, first of all, is that 75%...
sorry, that was a bit of a Freudian slip, Keith, on your part. I'm just trying to have a bit of fun with you. It was a no-point deal. Yeah, go on, okay. No room for humour. Go on.
MPs are against remaining, and therefore they're now trying to take back the referendum power from the people, which is corruption. And the Queen has to protect that. She has to stop that because it's corruption.
The Queen, oh my goodness. Keith, thank you for your call. Keith in Stoke Newington, he wants the Queen to intervene. Goodness me. Terry in Whitley Bay. Hello.
Hello, Sheila. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. I love Whitley Bay.
Yeah. Colour coats and Whitley Bay. I think it was in one of the great songs of the 1980s.
Never mind the songs. It's nice and cold and blustery and my kind of place.
But certainly wet and windy most of the time.
It's true. Anyway.
On democracy, I mean, this now becomes the key point. So if we're going to leave, you only have two choices. You either leave with a deal or you leave without a deal. And if Parliament won't pass a deal, that is the only other option left. The other factor is in terms of the democracy, it was MPs who have the right to vote on this, but they delegated that by a majority of 6-1, so that's 83 to 17%, to put this to the people. And they passed that on a franchise that we will implement what you decide. There was no talk of having a second referendum. All the arguments the Remainers bring out now, they had 9 months from the date of the declaration of that referendum to bring them all out. If they got it all wrong and didn't make the right arguments, that's not our fault now.
What if they made arguments that have turned out to be based on fantasy, or made arguments that they now claim they didn't make, even though it's been a long time since we had video in this country, and we can constantly play it back to them, you know?
Let's walk down that avenue. So one of the main arguments the Remainers make is they say Daniel Hannan made one argument for Brexit, Nigel Farage wanted to go down a different route for Brexit.
This applies on both sides. It's not I wasn't particularly alluding to just leavers there.
What I'm saying is what they're trying to say is because leaving has multiple options, if two people disagree, that means there is no defined leave option, which is true enough. But the problem is if you're going to say if anybody disagrees with somebody else on the side of an argument, and that invalidates the whole process, then where are we?
But there was an official leave campaign, wasn't there? You know, recognised by the Electoral Commission, and there was an official one. And the official one didn't bandy around no deal in the way that Boris Johnson now is.
OK, but on the other hand,
Did it?
Nick Clegg, Sharon, Farage, most of the others, Osborne, Cameron, all agreed that a vote to leave was a vote to leave the single market and the customs union. And Andrew Neil has got all the video clips of them all agreeing that. So, I mean, that was the only point between which Remain and Leave actually...
So you will applaud Boris Johnson if this is what he does?
Well, I think... the problem is it's a bit like a football match against a dodgy team. Every time they commit a foul against you, they shouldn't be penalised. Every time somebody else commits a foul against them, it's an outcry. You know, Parliament has been given an instruction...
I don't know what you mean then.
Well, 421 constituencies out of 650 voted to leave. If you look at it on a constituency basis...
But it wasn't fought on a constituency basis, was it, the election?
Well, no, it wasn't. But then again,
so let's not do that then.
Invalidates the Scottish argument because it wasn't a Scottish referendum. It was a UK referendum.
Well, it's and that's true too.
Yeah.
Yeah. But you didn't answer my question. Will you applaud Boris Johnson if this is what he does?
Yes.
Okay.
Because otherwise, what is the alternative, Sheila? So
all kinds of things, Terry. Like all kinds of things, like a sensible grown-up delay. I know people don't like them, but it might be a good idea given that we haven't sorted ourselves out yet. A second referendum, so that people like you and me can really let one another know across the whole nation exactly what we think now about all those variations on leave or remain, and then we'd really know, and then let's do it, whatever it turns out to be.
Referendum on Scottish devolution. Why didn't we have a second
I think we might soon. I think we might soon.
50.3%.
I think we might soon have a Scottish referendum. But anyway, let's see what happens. Terry, thank you. Terry in Whitley Bay. Paul in Twickenham. Hello.
Hello, Sheila. It could be that no deal is a disaster. It could be that it's not as bad as people fear. I've no idea. What I do know, Sheila, is when I went to cast my vote, there was no small print on my ballot paper. It said, do you want to leave or do you want to remain? Doesn't matter which one I ticked. In fact, I did tick leave. But it didn't say, with an asterisk, leave. If you tick this box, you can only leave provided a deal is done. And it didn't say, if you tick this box, the country will only leave provided we do a deal in the way that the Vote Leave campaign advocated. To be honest, Sheila, at the time, I wasn't really aware of Vote Leave, the campaign. I don't know quite what their claims were. Maybe I was dozing.
Who were you listening to at the time?
What I did listen, the word that struck me was when Nigel Farage, I know he's another evil character, but when
is it? An evil character? Your words, not mine.
He's as far as the media is concerned, he is. As far as I'm concerned, he isn't. But that's by the by.
I don't know. They seem quite nice to him. He's on a lot of programmes and papers.
I know. I listened to his programme. Very good. Sheila, what he said was, let's make July, whatever it was, our Independence Day. And that is a word that resonated with me. And what I would say to people who say no deal is impossible because it wasn't mentioned by the Vote Leave campaign, no one talked about no deal, that may be true, but I regard as almost as near to sacred as you can get a ballot paper. And the question was completely unconditional. It just said, do you want to leave or do you want to remain? Now, I reckon most people who tick leave wouldn't have batted an eyelid if we were able to do a reasonable trade deal with the EU, sell them our washing machines, import their wine and what have you. I don't see even the most vehement Leave supporters saying, well, I don't want to drink their wine or eat their cheese. No. I don't think
that's not really at stake, is it? I mean, I think there's no question of that.
I think the problem is, Sheila, when people say, oh no, Boris Johnson, he's a naughty boy, he wants to prorogue Parliament and leave without a deal, and he's going against all democracy. I would say, well, no, he isn't. It probably would have been good if we could have done a trade deal
Paul,
that everyone would. But what did your ballot paper say, Sheila?
Same as yours, Paul.
In what sense was my vote constrained by what Vote Leave happened to be advocating?
I don't think your vote was constrained. I'm talking about realities subsequent to you casting your vote. And like it or not, they exist. And some of those realities are about the difficulty of an orderly Brexit, a safe, orderly Brexit that doesn't cost Welsh farmers their jobs, that doesn't do the political damage that a no-deal Brexit would do, versus a calm departure. This conversation that I'm having with you today and with others isn't about remaining in the European Union. It's about doing Brexit with a calm head and doing it in a way that isn't an act of vandalism against people's jobs.
Sheila, I don't want any farms put out of business.
Well, you should be trying to stop no deal then, Paul.
No, and I also have family members who are very dependent on medicine, and that does worry me. My point is, Sheila, they're two different things. One is, what are the economic consequences and other consequences of leaving without a deal? And I readily admit it could be a disaster, it could be not so bad as we think. I've no idea. But that's a completely separate question from me going into the privacy of a ballot room and putting an X against a thing that says, do you want to leave?
I know it is, Paul.
And there's no asterisk.
I know it is, Paul, but life isn't just two questions, is it? Life is a million but life is a million questions, and what I'm asking you...
The danger, Sheila, of what you're advocating...
You don't know what I'm advocating because you won't let me finish a sentence.
No, I know you're saying that things change. If you apply that logic, Sheila, which you tick a box and things change, you have to reconsider.
No, I'm not asking you to reconsider. If you'd actually let me respond to what you've said, you would know that I'm not campaigning here to remain, nor am I telling you that your vote was a silly vote, nor am I telling you that you didn't understand your vote, and nor am I suggesting you have to change your vote. This is the problem with Brexit. Nobody listens to one another.
No, but you're saying, Sheila, that you're advocating an orderly Brexit. I'd love an orderly Brexit, but if we can't have it, if push comes to shove, the question is, does my vote count? And the analogy I'd give, Sheila, and I think the danger is, let's suppose there is a general election before Christmas. Let's suppose Labour win it, or whoever wins it, doesn't matter, Liberals, whoever wins it. And then they have a manifesto, and then I come along a year later and say, well, I'm afraid the people who voted for the winning party, I'm afraid they're going to have to think again because things haven't turned out as I expected. Let's suppose it was the Liberals who win, for the sake of argument, and let's suppose they say they're going to increase the benefits or the help for people who need to go into care homes. And let's suppose it doesn't happen for some reason that we can't foresee.
Again.
Are we therefore going to say to people who voted Liberal, sorry,
I might as well not be here, it's hilarious.
Sorry.
I've had enough, Paul. I literally might as well not be here. This isn't a conversation. That is literally, extraordinary, really. Absolutely extraordinary. It's as though we were from different planets, speaking different languages, and had lived entirely different experiences over the last 3 years. Extraordinary. Extraordinary. John has called in Surbiton to carry on our conversation about Trump's language. Hi, John.
Hi. Thanks for taking the call. Hello, everyone listening.
Hello, John. That's everyone listening.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can. Yeah, far away.
Oh, good. I think this hysteria about Trump's comment, I reckon those four ladies were rubbing their hands and grinning as soon as he said something like that, knowing they could get some sort of capital out of it and turn it into something that it absolutely isn't. If he'd have said those same things to a Scottish person living in New York, would he be called a racist? No, of course not. But it would be assuming the Scottish person is white and ginger hair.
It would be that was a bit racist. That was a bit nationalist, John, what you said there.
What? Assuming the Scottish
all Scots are white with red hair.
Well, you do get a lot of red-headed people from
Celts,
all over
Europe, actually.
Sheila.
No, but
not racist.
No, I didn't. I'm joking with you. I'm saying that let's not presume all Scots are red-haired and pale-skinned with freckles. But you are describing a typical but not comprehensive description of a Celt, and Celts exist all over Europe, not just in Scotland
isn't bad.
or Ireland.
If I was to get a phone book of Glasgow and just pick a name out of at random, I would put my money on that person being white.
But John,
probably.
But John,
there's nothing wrong with that.
But John,
assumption kept the human race alive, presuming things. This is why we're not ants. So to jump on Trump's comment, if he'd have said that to someone from Norway, which is, let's say they're the same race and same gene pool, exactly the same words, a Norwegian person.
But he doesn't, does he? He hasn't said these things to white people. He says them to dark people.
I've got a feeling
the way he behaved to the parents, the Muslim parents of the soldier who died in Iraq, I think it was, or possibly Afghanistan. The way he spoke about Mexicans, he does it to antagonise. He would rather win than not be racist. That's clear from his comments.
That's another assumption on your part, which is perfectly.
It's not an assumption. It's a conclusion. Reached. It's a conclusion I have reached from the evidence out of his mouth and his own campaigning.
Let me just start with where I wanted to start with. I'm not white, okay? I'm British born, but to foreign parents. I was born into Islam, and I'm growing up.
What's your ethnicity?
That's a long. I don't think we've got enough time, mate.
Well, we do. I want to make time for it. What's your ethnicity?
Okay. Well, first,
imagine I'm Kellyanne Conway, if you can, for a minute.
I think most people need to understand what ethnicity means. I will tell you my genealogy. My ethnicity is something down to my culture, my manner, my habits, my language, and how I conduct my life. It's got nothing to do with genealogy. That is the true meaning of ethnicity. My genealogy goes from, like, the eastern coast of China down through India. There's a Dutch woman in there floating about for a while ago, though. And then there's
still counts, John. Still counts.
And then there's this German kind of thing, but not like German. There's this.
You're like a superhuman, genetically speaking.
No one else has ever said that to me.
Well, you can have that for free, John.
Yeah, anyway, it's the old Germanic, like pre-First World War, where German enclaves spread all the way down towards, Romania and whatever. Anyway, I've had people say to me, go back to where you come from. But you see, it wasn't instigated by me. Whereas I think what Donald Trump, you read between the lines, he's saying, if you think this country's so bad, there's places that are worse, and those places are either where you were born or where your parents were born. They came to the US for a better life because the US is better than the failed states in some cases. But
John, they're not. But they're not. But these women and others like them are not. They're not. They're not threatening people with death. They're not blowing people up because they don't like aspects of American politics. They've stood as elected politicians, and they're campaigning as elected politicians, governing in their areas as elected politicians, and speaking what they regard as the political truth. They're doing what he does.
What did they say?
They're doing. Let me finish. They are doing what he does, and he gets to do it, and they don't. What's that about?
What did they say to instigate Trump's comments? No one knows, because you won't broadcast it, and they were vile. Okay, even I'm struggling to find out. And I'm looking.
He seems to have.
Everyone's just interested in attacking Trump.
He seems to have criticised them.
White, straight, Western man.
He seems to have criticised them for swearing.
I don't think that's an honest representation of his criticism, Sheila.
Well, you tell me your interpretation of it.
I think it's not the words; it's the meaning of what they were saying.
What was it?
Quite frankly,
what was it?
Everyone has. Well, I can't find out exactly, but they were. He never picks a fight. He retaliates. Yeah, even going back all the way back, he retaliates. He defends himself with the best form of defence. I would argue.
Racism is the best form of defence.
No, that's a stupid thing to say, isn't it?
I don't know.
Sheila, yeah, it really is.
I don't think it is, because you haven't convinced me he wasn't racist. I'm going to find out precisely what it is they said moments or 12 hours or tweets before his racist comments. John, thank you for your call. John in Surbiton, who's from everywhere. Michael's called from Belfast on this. I want to squeeze Michael's call in before I hand over to Ian Payne. Hello, Michael.
Hey, Sheila.
Hello. You're not convinced it's racist either, is that right?
Well, my point's a little bit sort of off target, but just want to say this, just after listening to that last guy there. You know, I think the word racist is the most abused word in the English language to date. It's used out of context in so many occasions. But just on the point that I phoned up was,
hang on. Has it been on this occasion?
Has it been on this occasion?
Misused, or is it accurate?
I don't know. I think that's a debate for another day.
Is it? No, it's the one we've been having for an hour.
Well, no, because you started the topic of the show. You started the debate of the show by saying
ethnicity.
With regards to ethnicity, should we only be seen as an ethnicity? Now, if you listen to the news, the media all the time, you may hear a report of, like, say, an incident in Chicago where black people are concerned. The media report the description of these black people as African American. That is describing someone's ethnicity and background. So,
but you know why, don't you? Because they're trying to find somebody in an investigation. So if they'd been wearing a purple spotty hat, they'd have said that as well.
Yes, but you started the debate today at the start of the hour by saying should we only see ourselves as an ethnicity? I mean, can I ask you? Do you think ethnicity is important?
No, not to me. Oh, is it interesting? Yeah. Is it important in terms of how I judge whether a person is a decent person or not? Absolutely not. Never. But I'm interested. If somebody tells me, I had a conversation yesterday with a man from Lebanon. He clearly, from his voice, was not from these shores. I asked him where he was from in the world. We had a great chat about Lebanese coffee, and he promised the next time he saw me to give me a sachet of the great Lebanese coffee he has at home, which has cardamom in it and tastes fantastic. And I said, that's nice. And off we both went in our different ways. We live locally, so we will see each other again. And, that's interesting. Our backgrounds, our history, our ethnicity is different. And it's fun. But would I judge him to be a good or bad person based on the fact that he's Lebanese? No. Would you?
Absolutely not. But ethnicity is still important, and we should preserve our ethnicity.
I'm not saying it's not, but it's not a
Well, you just said it wasn't a few minutes ago.
No, and then I corrected myself and said it's interesting, and of course it's important to the individual. But what I'm saying is, if it's used as a stick to beat people with, or if it's used as a means of judging a person's worth, then it's a dangerous thing to use, isn't it, in that way?
Of course it has.
Well, that's all I'm saying.
It has a positive and a flip side to it as well, the positive and the negative. But ethnicity is important, and we should look to preserve that. So people who...
Preserve it?
Preserve it, yes. I think that
preserve it by not having babies with people from other ethnicities. Is that what you're suggesting?
No, absolutely not. Ethnicity is important. So, people regard each other. We hear in the media people regarding each other as from a different racial background. I would coin it a different way. I would say it is people's expression, cultural expression.
Well, it's not. It's more than that, isn't it? Because it's used very much more than that. But thank you, Michael. We've run out of time. Thank you for your call, Michael, in Belfast.
Meanwhile, claims made by Boris Johnson during it could have been worse, it could have been Jeremy Hunt, during the final Conservative leadership hustings last night have been challenged by the EU. Holding up a kipper to the audience, Mr Johnson said that EU forces companies to pack their fish with an ice pillow, using it as an example of legislation we would leave behind after Brexit.
I want you to consider this kipper. This kipper, which has been presented to me just now by the editor of a national newspaper, who received it from a kipper smoker in the Isle of Man, who is utterly furious because after decades of sending kippers like this through the post, he has had his costs massively increased by Brussels bureaucrats who have insisted that each kipper must be accompanied by a plastic ice pillow. Pointless, expensive, environmentally damaging health and safety.
One or two problems with that. Let's talk about it in more detail with our Europe correspondent, Mark Stone, who's standing by in Brussels for us. Where do we start, Mark?
Honestly, Kay, he's talking cobblers. It is complete nonsense to suggest that EU regulation forces smoked fish producers based either in the UK or in the Isle of Man to accompany their fish with ice pillows. It's just not true. It is, in fact, British regulation that requires producers to do that. So that is the first problem. The second problem with his analogy is that the Isle of Man is not in the European Union, nor is it in the United Kingdom. It's part of the British Isles. It has its own government. But when a producer of smoked fish in the Isle of Man wants to send products to the UK, it has to abide by UK regulation, which is why the ice pillows were in that particular product, British regulation. Incidentally, if that fish producer wanted to send its fish, or any producer sending anything to the European Union after Brexit, they would still have to abide by EU regulations. So his argument falls completely flat there, because whatever it is you're producing in the UK after Brexit, whether it be a car or a kipper, you still have to abide by the laws and regulations of the destination market. And if that's the EU, then yeah, you've got to go jump through their EU regulation. But on this instance, it wasn't EU regulation in the first place. The EU Commission was pretty quick to stand someone up to knock the story down.
The case described by Mr. Johnson falls outside the scope of the EU legislation, and it's purely a UK national competence. So I hope this is clear, and the rules must be checked with the national authorities. There are strict rules when it comes to fresh fish, but this kind of rules don't apply to processed fishery products. I'm talking about the temperature and the exact case that he was explaining.
Okay, I think the winners here are the producers of kippers in the Isle of Man. I've just had a tweet, a reply from the Isle of Man government. They say, thanks, Mark. The Isle of Man produces some excellent food and drink. We're delighted to see such interest in our world-renowned kippers today. They go on with a serious point to say, at present, our producers are required to comply with the relevant Isle of Man legislation. The Isle of Man law is closely based on UK legislation and relevant EU food regulations. Clearly, in this case, as is evidenced on the British Food Safety Authority website, it is British regulation that requires ice pillows for kippers.
I don't know where to go with that, Mark, and I'm glad you're keeping a straight face on the last day of being in Brussels. Is this your last day?
Well, tomorrow, but maybe I won't be talking about kippers, but this could be the last time I'm talking about Brexit, and kippers is the subject.
And ice pillows, don't forget the ice pillows. Thanks, Mark, for now.
I'm patriotic. I'm a Brexiteer. If we've got to get out with no deal, we do.
Why?
And I am... Because I'm 70 years old.
Yeah.
I worked for Mullards, which was a Dutch-based firm, and they said, if I don't vote for Europe, I lose my job.
Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you what, I voted for Europe, not for them to control us, but...
Yes, but you just said we need to leave with no deal. I'm just wondering why.
I lost my job anyway, because it closed down in the end.
Yeah.
They went from one company to another. So, I'm sorry.
So why does that mean why does that mean the whole country has to leave with no deal? I'm very sorry that you lost your job, but why would that make you vote for a policy that will mean lots of other people lose their jobs?
We have had bad times in this country, and we've had good times, and I've gone through the lot, and we've come out on top because of character. He's right. We can source stuff from the rest of the world.
What stuff?
Well, I'll give you an example.
Yes, do.
The guy who owns Wetherspoons, when we got the vote that we wanted to come out, he started sourcing from other places in the world for a lot of his goods. And he wrote it in his magazine. That's where I read it from. Yeah. And he said he sourced goods. I think it was brandies, all sorts of spirits.
Was it cheaper than what he was getting from the European Union?
It was just as good.
So why wasn't he doing... You realise he was doing that before we left?
Because we were part of Europe.
Yes, but we still are. So why couldn't he have done that?
We've been conned.
Christine, just pause for a little moment, if you would. I'm going to take what you've said on trust. I'm sure that he did manage to secure...
Well, bring him on, interview him.
Absolutely, I will. I don't need to. I've got you here to represent him, but he's more than welcome to ring in, just as everybody else is. So your evidence that it's a good idea to leave is that he found cheaper drinks before we left.
And he passed it on. Well, they were all preparing if we left Europe.
But Christine,
and got
just
no
again,
deal.
I'm sorry, but you have to just reflect for a moment on what you've just said.
Yes.
We have to leave so that Tim Martin of Wetherspoons can do something he's already done.
Yeah, because he did it to prepare for if we had a
But he could do it. Christina, I'm going to labour this point, and I do apologise because it's not going to be pretty, but we're still in the European Union.
We are at the moment.
And he did this thing you're telling me we have to leave the European Union to do.
No, what he says is an example of all the Ramonas who keep saying this is going to happen and
Christine,
that's gonna
stop using insulting language.
Okay, I won't use that.
He has done something.
I've been insulted some of Brexit.
Well, I'm very sorry to hear that. But here's the thing, Christine. If this is the example you want to, if this is the bridge that you want to build, you've just told me that he's already done it.
Yes, because he's preparing for it.
Yes, but he's already done it, and we're in.
He has.
So we're in the European Union, right?
Yeah, we are at the moment.
And he's already done it.
Yes, because he foresaw the future.
Yes. So here's the question, Christine: Why do we have to leave to do something we could do while we were in it?
Because they're still controlling us. They've got no respect for this country. I've seen some of the things that have been going on.
Go on, tell me.
I love Britain. I love what it represents. I love what it gives to the rest of the world.
Well, you've hated it since 1975, though.
Pardon?
You've hated it since 1975.
No, because we weren't so controlled then.
So what are the
controls come in?
So talk me through. Actually, no, I'm not going to let that go, Christine. I think you need to take on board what you've said on national radio.
Yes, I am taking on board.
You've said
I was so furious when I was listening to it.
We have to leave the European Union because Tim Martin has done something while we were still in the European Union.
He did it because he prepared for us leaving, like a lot of other countries have done.
But how could he do it if we weren't allowed to do it because of all those controls?
Well, you'll have to get him on. I'm only going by what his magazine said.
But you must understand what you read. How could he do it if we're not allowed to do it?
Well, I don't know. I'm not a big businessman.
No, well...
But I was impressed with what he said.
But if you find 100 big businessmen, between 90 and 95 of them will tell you that we're making a terrible mistake. Why have you chosen to believe this businessman...
What about Mark Carney?
While not understanding what he's done?
Mark Carney has turned around. He was someone who said if we leave Europe we're going to go down the ban. But he's changed now.
He hasn't changed.
From what I've heard on, has been reported on the radio.
Christine, again, he hasn't changed. And Mark Carney was the person the morning after the result who enacted economic policies specifically designed to minimise the impact of what he warned us against.
Well, I'm sorry, I don't agree with you. I really do not agree with you.
Which bit don't you agree with, Christine? Which bit don't you agree with?
I don't agree with the fact that we are not going to be able to trade with the rest of the world.
But you just heard this morning from the Secretary-General of the International Chamber of Commerce for the UK. Of course, we'll still be able to trade, but it will cost us a lot more to do so, and we won't be able to trade freely come November the 1st with anybody. That's not an opinion, Christine. That's a matter of fact.
But haven't we heard a lot of things like this from a lot of these top people?
No.
And then they've turned round and said that this isn't going to happen and that's not going to happen.
Well, again, Christine, could you give me an example?
We were told
yes.
tablets, pharmacy. We weren't going to get this. We weren't going to get that. But...
Christine, we haven't left.
No, but they are able to source from other places.
Yes, but not under free trade agreements.
Well, I think... I'm sorry.
Why do you keep saying sorry?
Well, no. All right, I don't apologise for wanting to be a Brexiteer. I don't.
But what do you think that means?
Get out of Europe.
What I'm going to ask you again, back to the original question. Do you understand now why what you said about Tim Martin was a bit silly?
No.
Okay, let me try again. The things
you will not get me to say that. You will not get me to say that.
Okay, well, not silly then. But do you understand that he did the things you described?
He went and he sourced other places
while we were still in the European Union.
Well,
so he could have done that.
He could have made a vote to come out.
Yes, but we're still in. So anything he has.
At the moment we are.
Yes, and he's done this thing that you describe in such impressive terms. This thing he's done that convinces you it's right that we should leave, he did it while we were in.
Right, okay. How come we source all our metal to China if we're not allowed trade agreements.
Pardon?
If we're not allowed trade agreements for the rest of the world...
No, who said we're not allowed trade agreements?
Well, that's what you said is going to happen.
No, I said on November the 1st we won't have any. And
well,
I'm not an expert on metal trading, but I'm pretty sure we don't trade freely with China.
Well,
that there are tariffs in place.
Yes, but it hasn't harmed us, has it?
Pardon?
It hasn't harmed us having trade agreements with China.
We don't have any trade. We don't have any trade agreements with China.
Well, I'm sorry.
Why do you keep saying sorry, Christine?
Because you're getting annoyed at what I'm saying.
I'm not remotely annoyed.
I'm sorry if I'm upsetting you.
I'm not even upset, Christine. I'm just... I think the word I would use is...
Frustrated?
No, I feel incredibly sorry for you.
Well, you don't have to.
No, I know I don't have
I'm
to.
a very strong person.
I'm sure you are, but
I know you don't have to feel sorry for me, and you don't have to feel sorry for a lot of people.
I know I don't have to. I choose to feel sorry for you because you have believed a farrago of lies, and you've come on the radio to explain that you voted for lots of people to lose their jobs because you lost yours.
No.
Yes.
No, I don't want people to lose their jobs, but
that's what's going to happen.
If we go forward, I'm sure that a lot of people will be proved wrong.
Right. But you realise these aren't opinions. These aren't November the 1st. We have no trade agreements. At the moment, we have agreements with 120 different countries.
And where? What? All in Europe?
Well, obviously not. The European Union has all sorts of trading agreements with countries outside the European Union, which is what we will be on November the 1st.
Well, I can't
what
see
do you
it
think's
for a lot
going?
of other people.
What do you think's going to get better?
We're going to have control of our country back.
What control of what, Christine? What's the thing we can't currently control that most frustrates you?
They've said a lot of different laws have had to change. I can't remember them now.
You must be able to name one.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Now this is a crazy one.
Yeah.
But we all used to have our fish and chips in newspaper. And then it was deemed it was wrong.
Right.
Now, when we had the fish and chips in newspaper, there wasn't loads of people went down with tummy upsets and things like that.
Okay.
It had a beautiful smell to it, and I can remember that smell now and how lovely it was.
Yeah.
But they decided, and this is a small
and
thing.
that was the EU, was it?
Yes, the EU.
Okay.
That was something they did. And I'm sorry, and I listened. I listened to the European Parliament.
Yeah.
And I listened to some of the things they say should be done and shouldn't be done. I'll tell you what, we put billions into Europe. Do you see the schools and the health service any better?
Well, better than 1975?
In the poorer countries.
Better than 1975?
Yes.
You think things now are...
I would like to see them have decent schools and decent health.
Right.
But so nothing's gone into that.
So taking away the money we pay into the European Union is going to make there less money available for the poorer member countries, Christine, not more.
Well, they haven't made it available up till now, have they?
Well, I'm afraid they have. I mean, it's so easy to establish where this money is spent. The European Development Fund in particular.
All because they love what we've got over here, and I don't blame them for coming over here.
Then why have you voted to get rid of it all then?
Because I just feel, as a patriotic person for this country, and I'm talking about all the different...
But patriotism involves wanting what's best for your country.
Yeah. And
you voted to make it worse.
No, I don't think I have.
Well, tell me what's going to be better then, apart from... possibly we'll be allowed to wrap our fish and chips in newspaper again. Apart from that, what are you most looking forward to?
I'm looking forward to maybe not having so much immigration into the country.
Okay.
And I'm looking forward to having it controlled.
How did you feel when you found out that successive governments had chosen not to impose much stricter immigration regulations that they would be free to do as members of the European Union, as, for example, Belgium does?
Well, I'm sorry.
Why are you sorry again?
Okay, I'm not sorry.
No.
I'm not sorry.
There's a sense that you know you should be, because you keep saying it, but just the thing...
It's just your...
But patriotism doesn't involve...
I should be guilty for things.
No, not at all.
I'm not guilty
I'm giving you... Well, why... you think... Well, then you're not patriotic, are you? Because you voted to make everything worse.
No,
So what's going to get better?
Well, for a start...
Yes, apart from fish and chip paper.
No, for a start, we won't have such big lists on the National Health Service. That will probably start
what about all the doctors and nurses from the European Union who are already leaving? Who do you think is going to replace them?
I've already got in place plans for that.
You have?
Yes.
You've got plans in
Go
place?
back to the old way of nursing that I learnt.
Okay. Christine, you take care, all right?
Okay, we will beg to disagree.
No, we haven't disagreed. I've told you some stuff that's true, and you've told me about fish and chips.
Well,
there's no
unfortunately,
disagreement.
70 years old, I'm not. I can't go back into all the different things that have upset me.
No, just one would have done. I like fish and chips as well. I remember when it was wrapped in newspaper. I can't pretend I've ever felt it was a grave absence in the heart of British public life, but I would remind you, because I sense you use the word quite a lot, patriotism involves wanting your country to be the best it can be, not to impose economic sanctions on itself.
Having a report produced to keep us up to date with what's going on in, is it Northern Ireland, is that right? Is that what this is ostensibly about? So
Yes.
it hadn't had a parliament for, what, over a year?
They're not all Remainers. Plenty of people on that list I read out earlier on
I think
voted.
we all know.
Well, please let me finish
Come on,
my
Sheila.
sentence, Robert.
Yeah.
Plenty of people on that list voted for the withdrawal agreement every single time.
Yeah, that's a Remain document, isn't it? It's actually worse than Remain. But anyway,
I'm
there's
sorry.
no point. I mean,
sorry. The withdrawal agreement isn't
Yeah,
leaving.
it's a Remain document. It's actually worse than a Remain document.
It isn't.
Well, I know, and that's the thing. People are allowed to disagree, but a lot of Leavers believe it was. Here's the thing. I welcome this news as I'm quite happy with the no-deal Brexit, because I see that as a stepping stone to getting a free trade agreement. And the reason I welcome it is because people aren't stupid. The British electorate, I believe, is the most sophisticated in the world. It's perfectly capable of dealing with nuance and complexity and all the rest of it. And actually, it sees now, and it has seen for the last 3 years, people who voted, and it's interesting the way you introduced it. The House voted for Article 50. It voted to make the legal default position to leave with no deal unless an arrangement was come to. And now, all of a sudden, they're saying the opposite, right? So people can see that everyone knows what's going on.
But the very last thing that Ed Vasey said to me in my conversation with him just before 2 o'clock was it gives us space to reach a deal with the European Union. He didn't say it gives us space to undermine the 2016 vote and not deliver Brexit. He didn't say those things.
Yes, I've done loads of deals in my life. Actually, my job title used to be a dealer in the old days. Look, the thing about
that makes you Michel Barnier, I suppose.
No,
I've dealt cards in a game of Snap. That doesn't mean anything.
No, but I have done lots of deals, complex, of quite high level of complexity with international trade agreements. But here's the thing,
all the rest of it sound like Boris Johnson.
Well, I mean, how much time have I got to go into the detail? Here's the thing, Sheila. Right, where the truth of it is, when you want to do a deal with someone, if both of you want to do a deal, actually it can be arrived at quite quickly, and then you go into the detail, the technicalities later. We're not going to get a deal if you keep extending the period. Everyone knows that, who's serious about this argument. If you keep saying to someone that you keep paying $12 billion a year to, hey, guess what? I'll extend it another 6 months. What are they going to say? You're going to give them an extra £6 billion? They're going to say, of course we'll let you extend it. Do you remember we were told there'll be no further extensions than October the 31st? First thing the new president says, of course there could be an extension. We're not stupid, Sheila. The British electorate isn't stupid, and we're treated with contempt all the time. And here we are. Imagine how this is going to go down tonight.
Hang on. The EU has never ruled out extensions definitively. It said...
Oh, right. Okay.
Well, it hasn't. I don't know why you're laughing at me. It just hasn't.
I'm not laughing at you, but they have, though. They have.
No, they haven't. No, they haven't. No, they haven't.
2 years.
They haven't. They haven't. They haven't. They said the people who ruled let me correct you. The people who ruled out extensions were on this side of the channel. What the EU always said was unless it was for a substantial democratic event.
Yeah, okay. So basically we were told March, then April, then June.
Okay.
We ended up with October.
All that stuff I said in between your original statement, which was wrong, to correct your original statement, which was wrong, it's as though it was made of candy floss and was never actually said.
But Sheila, come on.
That is how you sound, Robert. You sound like... What was that character in... what was that character?
Okay.
You know the guy. Oh, Lord, I can't remember his name now. Okay, I'll remember it.
Clear, though, isn't it? Article 50 was pretty clear. It's a 2-year period in which you come to an agreement. If you can't come to one, right, then you go onto a no-deal basis. And everyone knows who's serious that if you have a deadline and everyone thinks that is it,
then that's what focuses attention. We're negotiating now. These people in Parliament are now basically asking us to negotiate with someone while we still pay £1 billion a month. And they can't see the conflict of interest there. I mean, what's amazing in this story is Rebecca Long-Bailey, and many of them already conceded, the EU doesn't want a no deal. Guess what? That's why you keep that on the table. And what we're doing is we're taking no deal off the table. But think, Sheila, tonight and tomorrow and over the weekend, people who thought that, OK, it looks like it's going to be no deal, are now going to find out that Parliament has come up and used Northern Ireland again in this case, but really they've used anything at their disposal to protect their relationship with their beloved EU. In this case, they've said, what we need is to make sure that we need a report on what's going on in Northern Ireland. We haven't needed one for the last year and a half. We're not worried about that. But all of a sudden, when it looks like we might be leaving on no deal, we need that report. How is that going to go down, do you think?
All right, Robert, you've had your say. Thank you, Robert in Dulwich. Mike, I think we can get a better line now with Mike in Ware, who we tried to speak to earlier on. Hello, Mike.
That's right. Hello. Yeah, I won't say anything against the caller that you just had because I disagree with pretty much everything you said.
That's all right.
However, I think the main thing that this vote today, as with the other votes to try and stop us leaving, which is basically what they're trying to do, it's hastened the fact that I'm hoping, in common with a lot of other people, that when Boris becomes Prime Minister, he'll get rid of people like Philip Hammond, Gawk, and a lot of the other people that have
well, he probably will. He probably will, yeah.
Well, I hope he does, and if that doesn't do the trick, I'm hoping that there is a general election, and I hope that the Brexit Party get in.
But what trick will it? Hang on a sec. What trick would it do? I mean, I could see that in a general election, it puts them at risk of losing seats and all the rest in the Brexit Party.
I'm hoping that what it will do, it will change the numbers in Parliament, and there will be a lot more pro-Brexit MPs in Parliament elected, because I think all the scare tactics that have been used are going to go against the Remain element rather than for them. They can pull every trick in the book. They can have Dominic Grieve and John Bercow and all these other people rooting for them. But I think in the end it's going to backfire on them, because as your previous caller said, or the one before the previous caller, the British public aren't stupid. People look down their nose, Remainers look down their nose and can't understand why people voted to leave the glorious European Union. But in fact,
Mike,
they'll find out.
All right,
it's
Mike,
a bluff.
Mike, can we agree that people who look down their noses at other people because of their views aren't just Remainers, aren't just Leavers? Some won't have a view on Brexit whatsoever. It's just a type of person that does that. It's not really, but it's not true.
We can't agree, Sheila, because the people that
every Remainer, everyone who voted Remain looks down their nose on you. Is that what you're saying? Have you checked with all of them?
No, I'm not interested in every other Remainer.
You've just said it.
In the Remain. No, I'm interested in the Remain majority in our Parliament. I'm not interested in we'll find out when there's a general election how right I am, because I think it will be a landslide for people that support what the referendum result was in 2000.
Well, we might find out before Christmas whether you're right about that, Mike. You could well be right about that. Mike in Ware, thank you. Ed in Hounslow, hello.
Good afternoon, Sheila.
Yeah, now be nice, Ed. Let's end on a high. Come on, be nice.
Oh, okay, I'll try and be nice, but I'm just listening to fake news all the time and non-journalism. I mean, you've been admitting earlier on that you haven't even listened to what this woman's saying.
No. I didn't say I haven't even listened.
You said you hadn't listened in full.
In full, because I couldn't find the full thing. That's why I was trying really hard, I promise you, which is why I ended up playing that CBS clip, and I will go and find out. And you will not get me defending Ilhan Omar or anybody else if they say Jew equals money equals greed. And if she said that, I'll get back to you on it.
Well, you haven't tried hard enough, because it's all over the internet. I mean, give you an example. You were saying yesterday that if somebody was saying something about, terrorism or something, that you could understand it. Well, that's exactly what she is doing. She's bigging up Al-Qaeda. She's saying that.
What did I say yesterday?
I heard you say to a young man who phoned in, who said he wasn't white and was supporting Donald Trump, and he asked you, well, what was it that Donald Trump was replying to? What had been said? And you said you didn't know, and you still don't know, it would appear.
No, you're kind of spinning. I remember the call now, but you're spinning it in a rather different way. The young man I think so. The young man who called said, I'm not even going to say what they said to prompt Donald Trump to say this, and I said, no, go on, say it. What did they say? And I ended up concluding, because he wouldn't, was that he couldn't.
No, he said that he hadn't been able to find out. I heard him distinctly say that. He said he was trying to find out but hadn't been able to. If you go on, you can see on the American scene people like Jesse Lee Peterson, who is black, condemning these women. People like Patricia Dixon, who is black, condemning these women.
At no point have I said, how dare Donald Trump criticise these perfect women. At no point have I said that.
I saw Patricia Dixon, who is black, on YouTube earlier on, saying, good on Donald Trump, and he should have said that, and they should go home. And she's saying, in fact, if you type in anyone living in America that hates America, leave. That's what she has to say. Now, these people who are condemning them are black, so it's nothing to do with racism. You keep saying he's always racist. He's racist.
Oh, we've got round to black people can't be racist again. Oh, Ed. We ended on... I was hoping we could end on that nice feeling with James, but we couldn't. But Ed, thank you for your call. Ed in Hounslow, that's it from me.
I want to take your calls on how you're feeling about Boris Johnson this morning, what's coming next week, and whether you feel that clearly he's off to a bad start if members of Parliament have managed already to stop him shutting down our Parliament. Or is he going to be our saving grace? Are there a few of you out there who've forgotten his continual gaffes? His inability to deliver the Garden Bridge, remember that one? His buying of useless water tanks when he was London mayor, remember that one? Remember the cable car that hardly anybody uses that he spent millions on? And remember that estuary airport that he used to bang on about when he was against Heathrow? All of these things, and still we've now got the spectre. And look, let's face it, I don't think anyone would ring in and say that Britain isn't in a sorry place internationally, that we aren't looking like a complete basket case, that we aren't embarrassing and shaming ourselves across the international community. And then we bring in Boris Johnson, and you know, a lot of the world, when they see Boris Johnson, they also see a sort of Mr. Bean type character. And here he comes, rowing in to number 10 to embarrass us further. That's how I feel about Boris. How do you feel about Boris this morning? You can see I'm in a fiery mood on what is my 47th birthday. Anne from Bromsgrove. Anne.
Hello, David.
How are you feeling about Boris?
Well,
Hello.
I feel exactly the opposite to you.
Do you?
I think you're all badly letting this country down, the people down. You've caused so much derision. You're not Democrats. You don't own the name. You just... I'm just speechless. And after that little outburst now, I'm just speechless. You know, you should take a good look at yourselves. You should stand up straight, and you should think, we can't behave like this any longer. You're so bad, so bad.
I was just slouching then, Anne, and I found my back straightening to absolutely sit straight, at least in my chair.
Yeah, when you should sit up straight, and you should recognise that you're in the wrong.
And what would you like me to do, Anne?
To carry out the mandate that was given to you by this country, by the people of this country 3 years ago.
And what was that mandate, Anne?
To leave the European Union. We were given a leaflet by a government then that told us that we will be leaving the single market, we will be leaving the customs union. We will be coming out of Europe. We will need to come out of this political union with this dreadful federal state that's going to... They're going to make your parliament, your House of Commons, a puppet theatre.
Oh, come on,
You'll
Anne.
Just be puppets.
Anne,
are you
telling me, Anne, are you telling me that when you went into that booth over 3 years ago, you were voting for a no-deal Brexit, and you were voting for a no-deal Brexit.
I was voting for the freedom of this country. It's irrelevant, the trade, the money, anything. First of all, once we're free, we can do what... Well, we think we can do what we like, but now we've got no faith in our parliament, have we? We've got no faith in our parliament. We've got no faith in our democracy any longer. Because of you terrible people. I'll be a little bit more polite with you than Donald Trump. I will say the place needs clearing out. It needs clearing out, and very quickly. We need an election very quickly.
Who do you want in it? Who do you want in it? Boris Johnson?
People who will truly abide by the people's wishes. That's who we need in it.
Anne, look, I'm holding up my finger. You can't see me. I'm licking it. I'm holding it in the air. That's Boris Johnson, and that's who you're going to put your faith in? Really?
No. I put my faith...
you said no. Anne, you said no.
I paid up to the Brexit Party, and that's who I put my faith in.
You're going to put it in Nigel Farage, are you?
I'm afraid you'll find yourselves out of a job. Carry on. All you're going to do is find yourselves out of a job.
You're putting your faith in Nigel Farage.
You're going to find yourselves out of a job, and that's all I can say to you.
No.
And have a nice day.
All right, Anne. I'll see you later. James from Clapham. Enter the conversation. James, what's your view?
Yeah, hi, David. Happy birthday.
Oh, cheers. Thanks a lot.
Right, David, firstly, I don't see what your problem is with the pensioners voting for Boris Johnson and elected him, because no one voted for Gordon Brown, did they? You didn't have a problem then.
Well, you make... look, no, my point...
You didn't have a problem then. He was coronated by the Labour Parliamentary Party. No contestants against him. You didn't have a problem with that, but you seem to have a problem because it's pensioners.
No. My what I was, I suppose, indicating, James, was I've met pensioners who are passionately for Remain, but I have also met... pensioners, generally speaking, in the home counties, they've paid off their mortgage, they have a nice pension, and their view is that we can leave with no deal. But I think if you're in a much more fragile situation, if you're younger, if you're worried about your jobs prospects, if there's a downturn in the economy or when there's a downturn in the economy, you might have a different view. So that was the point I was making if it didn't come across properly.
Right. Okay, yeah, because at least there has been a contest in that party. There wasn't one with Labour. And you mentioned Britain is a medium-sized country. Yes, we are a medium-sized country with the fifth largest economy in the world, and we sit as a permanent member of the UN Security Council. So if we need to speak to China, we can do so as one of five.
Hang on a minute.
We have got clout.
There's a question about how long we'll be on the Security Council of the UN, and that's a question mark, particularly if we leave the European Union.
The question mark is the payment that we make to them. We are, and after America, David, so just to get your facts right, we're the second largest contributor, because I've worked with the United Nations in Bosnia. So we are the second biggest supplier to the UN. So if they wanted take us off the Security Council, please, I've got no problems with that. I don't want to be the policeman of the world. We won't have to pay into the United Nations if they want to remove us, because we're the biggest.
James, why do you think we're the fifth largest? Why, actually, it's the sixth now, but why do you think we're the sixth largest economy in the world? Do you think any of that has got to do with the single market?
I'll correct you there, David. We're still the fifth.
No, we're the sixth.
No, France hasn't overtaken us yet. We're still the fifth.
Do you think any of that's got to do with being in the single market, James?
The single market, as far as I'm concerned, is just a mafiosa club where tariffs are put on, so the European farmers are then basically have an unfair advantage of people outside of the European coming in, because all it is a tariff game. I voted to leave. There was no deal on the table when I voted to leave. No matter what anybody says, I want to leave. So if Boris Johnson doesn't prorogue Parliament, then you will have your way, and a no-confidence vote will come in, and we'll have our chance, because I don't care either way. But I want a general election, preferably a general election, to put my mark down and say how I feel and the rest of this country. Because you're going to have a big surprise there down in the Parliament, because we've told you what to do. and you have argued amongst yourselves, and you will not get us out because you have a vested interest to keep us in.
No, but James, look, the truth was, I am entitled as a Member of Parliament to take a view on the deal that emerged that Theresa May came up with. And she was warned, she had some red lines that she shouldn't have stuck to. She could have gone in a different direction after she did badly in the general election that she shouldn't have called, but she decided to call.
No, I agreed.
Yes,
I agreed.
and so I take a view on her deal, and I voted against her deal. I did that on behalf of my constituents. What's wrong with me doing that exactly?
No, David, you did that on behalf of me as well, to be honest.
Thank you. But James, and then we're not in any disagreement, James. Let's go and have a beer. What's the problem?
No, I don't. I thank you for voting down that deal, because that deal was not a deal.
Great.
It was a subordination, and we were there as a silent, not even as a partner, as a silent member that did nothing. And I'm glad you voted it down. We should basically, that was no deal. That was no negotiation. She did no negotiations, and she was walked all over.
Right, so on behalf of the people of Tottenham and on behalf of you, James, in Clapham, I voted against her deal. I did my duty. I used my judgment. What's the disagreement between us now?
The disagreement is that Parliament is 75% pro-Remain. You would rather have us remain. You would then rather put another referendum on us because you've ignored the first. It takes 2 referendums, evidently in your case, to leave, but 1 to remain. It's absolutely abominable. We will not stand for it. Democracy has spoken. You have spoken against us. So what we've got to do is we've got a Prime Minister that, unfortunately, we'll have to either prorogue Parliament for 2 weeks, which of course you guys,
James, we've now departed.
You guys will stop.
James.
No. All you've done is an amendment to the Northern Ireland Bill. You have not cast it in stone. So you be very careful that he hasn't got his constitutional lawyers on it, because if it goes to court, which it will, politics is now going to be being dragged through the court, because we've got Gina Miller and we've got John Major that are going to basically going to take the Prime Minister's
James,
court.
just take a breath for a second. Take a breath for a second,
forget, has Parliament been prorogued before, David?
Well, of course it has. But look,
when was it prorogued
James, you can't have it both ways. You cannot say we're taking sovereignty back to this country and then bolt the doors of Parliament and refuse to let members of Parliament in to debate the most important issue of the day in Parliament.
You wish to hand power back to Brussels.
Yeah, but
do you not understand?
We're not run by the mob here. We're run by members of Parliament.
No,
and if you don't like us, you vote us out in a general election. That's how democracy works, James.
Well, let's do it then. Go and do a vote of no confidence, because you're not going to let him prorogue, and we will show you what you mean. You'll be safe, David, there. Yeah, you'll be safe. But the rest of those Labour MPs, like Yvette Cooper, go and get your Strictly Dancing shoes on, sweetheart, because that's where you're going.
It wasn't Yvette, it was Ed Balls who was on Strictly Dancing. But look, I suppose...
You'll be joining in.
You're saying they can both be on Strictly. James, you've made me laugh on my birthday. Thank you very much for ringing in from Clapham.